Okay, let me cover the Toomey case. That was the name. Good morning, leadership of Corpus Christi. You know, my friend George, you see him on the street. George is an alcoholic. But he lives in a trailer park off of Waldron Road or NAS Drive, right by the Naval Air Station over here. My daughter used to live there, and she kind of broke up with her boyfriend. But also, George's mother lives in that trailer park. It's Brother Dave, Pastor Dave, who feeds a guy. So it's kind of a local trailer park. At the Toomey case, both Sheriff Kalin should have resigned over that case. Let me tell you what the Toomey case was. It was a man by the name of Mr. Toomey, which I covered this before. And we didn't know the whole story in the beginning, but tragically, he had a discrepancy with neighbors, and he shot. I forget how many people were killed in that trailer park. Obviously, tragic. The cops went, arrested Mr. Toomey, then he was found dead in the county jail under Mr. Kalin's watch. I believe he was a sheriff at that time. This guy should have resigned years ago. This is what happened. The local media finally got pictures of Mr. Toomey. It was one of the most brutal beatings you would have ever seen. I mean, you should see that man's face. Equal to the testimony of my friends. That I gave the names, the cops, everything else, the same exact beating that my friends got over the years. Full acknowledgement of those in authority that they're doing this. Well, when you saw the picture of Mr. Toomey, then you found out that he was found hung in his jail cell again. The multiple hangings in the county jail. Then the story unfolded that Mr. Toomey was having problems with neighbors maybe for years. And that day he called the police department multiple times, maybe 5 times that day. Now, whatever the altercation was, obviously there was something going on out there. The last call, the cops told him, if you call us again, you're going to get arrested. Okay? He's warned. Remember, arrests in this city, these criminal trespasses are like candy. There's lawlessness in this town. So, the next call they got was there were shots fired, people dead. The CCPD, right down one of the streets you normally see me, they showed up and beat the shit out of Mr. Toomey. Beat his ass to a pulp. The local media reported that they brought him to an undisclosed location. Like Chicago had a spot where they illegally held people and tortured them. This was a Chicago PD. After the beating at the undisclosed location, then he went to the county jail, then the next day was dead. Okay? Now the family, no justification of the crimes that Mr. Toomey committed, but they were seeking, I think the city settled, the county settled. Once again, you got a settlement of something, I believe. But they wanted to get to the bottom of it, and I heard one of the sons speak and say there's something wrong about that case. Now, Mr. Simpson, Chief Simpson, Floyd Simpson, was the chief at that time, and they had the video, I guess, of pictures of one of the officers, and so I think one guy resigned or whatever. But then there was questions whether Mr. Toomey was murdered in the county jail. Legitimate questions. And then it was one of those things, oh, he was under suicide watch, whatever. But then during the investigation, they said, all we got to look at is the cameras. Did the guys go check on the cell like they said, or were they pencil whipping the logs or whatever? And then the reason there was no videos, stunningly, Mr. Kalin said, oh, we were replacing the cameras at that time. With the history that I have showed you the last few days, you should have a federal criminal investigation in this place. The victims of Mr. Toomey, tragic, and I think he killed a minor was also killed that day. That was gross incompetence and negligence. And after that incompetence, the way they responded and warned him you called again, then going to an undisclosed location to get brutalized like that, and then to be found murdered, and then for the sheriff or dead, and then for the sheriff to say we were replacing cameras. Now, do you understand? Do you believe that this place is the most corrupt city in the U.S.? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The cases of my friends that had to perform acts. And then I used to question that until I found, no, that happened. And there were officers who had friends, multiple friends. Some of the people I know on the street were friends with some of the cops. And the cops said, tell John not to say anything. Can you imagine that? Tell him not to bring that up. Tell him not to say it. Cops asking some of the friends, he had since passed away. It was my good friend Huey Martin. Tell John not to explain. And then I thought, I wonder if the leadership knows. They did. They did. The leadership knew. Now, you know, my father retired as a firefighter, fire captain. And it's sad in the sense that a retired captain out of, back then it was the North Bergen Fire Department, North Bergen, New Jersey, where you see my videos. Then it changed to like a regional fire department. But you know, recently they had to move from the house they were in. Hopefully I'll be up there not too long from now. And then they had to find another place because on the retirement, firefighters who retired, even families of the people who died in 9/11, do you know, some of those guys are almost at a poverty level. When I bring up my friend Casanova, knowing that he's a veteran and knowing that some of these guys served, some of these people served in these, and then to see the overpaid police department in this city with all the benefits and everything else, you would expect not only to live up to the standards, but to not commit actual felonies. And you know, I wrote letters to all these commissions that whatever they were. Oh, that can't be going on. That, of course it went on. Of course some of these things went on. And then when I knew cops sent friends that they knew, the guys on the street knew me, go tell John this and that. And then I realized, oh, they know. These cops are hot. To me, they run this South Texas city like they've been here for so long. And so anybody that thinks, you know, I'm moving to Corpus Christi because it's got aesthetic beauty, meaning it's a pretty town, but they've made some mistakes, again, in doing things. It's kind of not looking in the whole new thing. But you got to understand, you're not coming to, like, if you moved in the Midwest or even New York City or whatever, you know, you expect, this is like a criminal, corrupt locality where the people that have been here for years all have dirt on one another. It was a disgrace when the Kohler Times covered up for the criminal acts of a particular judge. With all, particularly the cases I covered this last year. Your odds in this city of getting run over, getting killed because the roads are undrivable, and then if it's people that are connected, even the local media will do all they can to cover up. And so it's just more like a little small town where people have dirt on one another. It was an amazing thing during some of the experiences where I've discussed over the years, where I realized some of the cops had asked some of the homeless guys to kind of like cover up for activities that those homeless guys were forced to do. And I thought, how could you even purport to be a progressive city when I saw, you must be kidding me. What are the odds on any citizen that exposes criminality? Do you understand the standard for me today to get arrested? The standard would simply be me going to Walmart, and an officer can go in and tell that lady, I want you to sign a criminal trespass on me. And the lady could say, oh, I'm at work today. and you had the badge. You know, one time at the Kingsville Fire Department, many years ago, somebody supposedly was illegally hooking up like the cable on a pole. Whoever did it, look, I don't know. Like they hooked up the cable, so there was like a criminal investigation. Is somebody hooking up the cable TV? And I wasn't. They didn't investigate our shift, but it was a Christian friend of mine. They told me the story that the cops at that time came to do the investigation, like who's illegally at Firehouse hooking up the cable. And my one friend, he's a Christian friend. I don't know if he retired. He said, you know, that when the cops showed up, they ripped his badge off his shirt, like they were good guy, bad guy. How many bad guys are you? Like, leave the public alone. Keep your hands off the public unless it's justified. And they ripped his badge. He told me. It says righteousness on the right and on the left. The biggest threat to this community, if you are coming to this community, is your son or daughter being arrested because they stopped and bought a soda. And they came out of one of these. We're going to visit Corpus Christi. We might relocate. And the threat is you walk out of that store and that cop could say, you're under arrest. And the girl could say, for what, officer? I just had a criminal trespass on you but I went in the store I went into Whataburger to buy coffee. Look, we're without law here, young lady. You know, when you bastards went into my daughter's house illegally, documented. Law enforcement started harassing one of my daughters. Going by, driving by, so okay. And they scoped out her house and waited until they used to help the mother of one of the people that lived in Alice, and they'd have to go to Mexico because sadly, because the way medications are, you know, people sometimes go to Mexico. They scoped out my daughter's house. And then when she got back from Mexico, she asked me, Dad, did you come to the house? I said, no, because somebody left the back door unlocked, and they let one of the dogs by the name of Han, a nice pit bull, looks like Fat Boy, Jammer's pit bull. And they let it out. They went through that property. And eventually we put cameras. But we finally figured out that one of those damn cops, lawlessness in South Texas, he waited until they left. This is more than likely what happened. I contacted the sheriff, the captain in charge, talked to him, and then he realized what was going on. So a cop could have a pet peeve, and then they just walked in. And that cop figured this would happen more than likely, because they do a lot of dog rescues. I have a beautiful one here that my kids just rescued, another one they're going to adopt there. So when he figured, because we thought, who else could have walked in? There's other properties around. There's a suspicious house across the street where they live, all types of cops at night, and who knows what the hell they're doing. And here's the Henry. They just adopted this dog out. This is a pet rescue my daughters did. You know, they're trying to do good, but, you know, the criminality of the cops, you got to duck bullets. You got to get run off the road in Corpus Christi, Texas. And so then they went into the property, that cop, and walked through. Let's see maybe if they figured, we see somebody, look, it's Mr. John. Oh, yes, I'm my daughter's father. Oh, you just went for my gun? No, I didn't go. Who's to say if they blew my head off right there? What is the criteria in this region? It's criminal. It's criminal. And then when he went out that back door, which was not deadbolted because he opened it, he figured, that pit bull went out, thinking, they'll never know because there's other dogs out there. But that pit bull was bit by a rattlesnake. My daughter was treating him. He's not supposed to be out. Now you're dealing. This is not my friends that are doing Robert. This is corruption and people wearing uniforms. Where the Lindsay Opals and the commissioners, let's pump more money. Let's pump more money. For that element, what you're doing is financing a criminal organization. when that element, not all of them, but that element, you're pumping money into a criminal organization. I watched a special. It was very interesting, but it was a New York City cop. And he was rogue back in the 70s. Oh, I forget the name of it. But, man, he was doing drug deals and everything. And everybody at that department, the title of that documentary was named after the district that he worked out of in New York City. Very interesting. And everybody knew that he was rogue. And the guys in charge, but they're there to get their checks. But you know that cop's out, he's committing crimes, killing people left out. Yeah, we know. They all knew. Amazing. They did finally a full investigation on it. I forget the title of that documentary. But the amazing thing was, everybody knew. So like, oh, I'm going to work. I'm gonna check the fire trucks today, and those cops were going to do this, and oh yeah, so-and-so's going to go out. He might kill. He might murder you. Oh, he's an officer. Oh yeah, But one of our guys, when they busted G.I. Joe, the famous case. There's so many cases I could give you. There was a lady that was got divorced from her husband. He was a cop, and so he was mad. So what he did is set her up. They planted a bunch of pot. I think this is California. Bunch of drugs under her car. And the judge, and at that case, and the cops and all, they were all in on it. Now, she was in prison. They got her on a drug bust. She insisted, like, this, you guys set me up. They laughed, like, of course we set you up. We're criminals. That's what we are, criminals. And she did years in prison. Finally, it was revealed. Yes, they set her up. The judge knew. They were all friends, sort of like Good Old Boy Network. Then they were doing this old case I read over you. Then they were doing some type of negotiations with the police union, negotiations with the city leadership. There's a couple I've read on this, even one from New Jersey. And during the negotiations, some of the commissioners were not like giving as much money to the cops in their contract negotiations. So one of the negotiators on the city side, a commissioner or whoever it was, drove home one day from a restaurant. I remember this case because he was sober. He was like a guy. And he got to his house, and then the cops rang the bell. They said, step outside. What do you need? You're drunk. Now, he was sober. He was like a big AA guy. But he was one of the commissioners, the city leaders that was negotiating with those cops. So I'm not drunk, but they saw him. We saw you drinking alcohol. He was drinking like a ginger ale at a restaurant. And one of the cops that was there that night called the other buddies, pulled that guy out. Just criminals. Absolute criminals. And then it was finally brought to the attention. Yeah, they broke every law. There was a woman from New Jersey. This was a commissioner. I read it when I was in New Jersey a few years ago. Same thing. They started pulling her over. Get out of the vehicle, bitch. Oh, aren't you officer? Don't you understand? Whether we put the case, we put the cop's wife in prison, set her up, whether we do this. Officer Jenowitz was G.I. Joe, famous case. I covered that case. That cop's story was he was embezzling funds for like the youth program. This was Midwest, Chicago or somewhere, Illinois. And so as he was embezzling funds, it was famous national manhunt. And Mr. Cop. Everybody loved him, respected him. Let's get more money. The commissioners, let's pump money in. Surely they can't be committing crimes. But then they investigated G.I. Joe, Officer Jenowitz. Why? He was stealing money, which is common, out of the kids' fund. But everybody loved that cop. He's a good guy. There's a lot of criminals that, look, they're good people. I love you. John Gotti was loved in his neighborhood. I whacked this one, killed this one. The guy, his neighbor, accidentally killed his kid on a mini bike. He got whacked, but people loved him. So, Mr. Joe was being investigated. But then one day, the reason it made national news, Fox broke the cover-up. But the media and every cop on that force were covering up for something. Joe Genowitz, and I remember I questioned it, and then I was right as I covered that, talking about it. He went out one night on a run, had his radio, and then he described the description of a black kid and a minority, and he gave a description. Then he said, I'm chasing them out here in the field. His vehicle stopped, and then they found him dead in the field. And it was a national manhunt. And they had the description of an actual black kid. That was a real description. And then they went after those kids. We're going to find you, and then we're going to do the manhunt and every resource, everything, because the cop was killed. But then the local medical examiner out of that region was just, not what you have going down here. It came out in a report that it was a suicide. Those cops, when the truth was coming out, raged. How dare you say, we're going to get that black kid for killing Mr. Genowitz? But they started knowing in-house that that cop, Giorgio, killed himself and set up the black kid that he saw at an ATM on his way to commit his crime, suicide, because he was being investigated. But they wanted to cover that up. Then a retired captain from that department, this was all coming out on the news. He called, because it was a nationwide manhunt for these kids all over Big Neck. He called his own department and cursed them out and said, you better tell the actual truth or I'm going to come down there. Their own cops said that. Then that came out. And like they were going to charge him for threatening. So in-house, they knew that Genowitz was a thief and that he did commit suicide. But at that point, they didn't want to look bad because they honestly, in the beginning, thought he was killed. And he saw that black kid at an ATM. And figured I'll set him up, so that's how we get to this absolute criminality you've never seen in the history of humanity. And then the lady commissioner who began the investigation into that officer with the retirement package, pump more money, but she found out he put a hit on her. Now, the local authorities knew that, but they wanted to keep that secret. So you had all those cops working. Oh, Joe's going to kill that commissioner, but, well, so what? If he takes her out, we got that. And the average public, you had all this going on in another police department in Philadelphia. The average public has no idea that one of the most criminal elements in this U.S. are people that are doing this stuff. Because look, I have friends of mine, if they did multiple things, they'll be in jail. But officers will not. Because they work, they know each other, they have stuff on each other. When they go out to eat in the evenings, all of these people are like, they're friends with each other. Some use, some have drug problems. So you're doing meth with the local judge, he's buying it from somebody else, and all of a sudden something happens. And then they're investigating the murder of somebody locally. And the family's in distress, and they're like, solve the murder. And then possibly, in the midst of the investigation, oh no, the person may be connected to the murder who might be somebody that's actually connected to criminal activity with those in authority. How are you going to arrest that guy? If he knows something on the judge or the cop or the sheriff or whoever, then those get unsolved. I believe this is the most corrupt criminal city in the United States of America. I believe that the local authorities and community, the younger rookie cops, they're not into, this is not their lifestyle, the younger ones. It was the older ones that are still in power, the ones that have seniority. They're the ones that have all this going on. A lot of them retired. One day I was at Timmons, it might have been 8 years ago or so, and the cops came up for whatever it was, and one of the guys said hi, and one of the officers, a young one, said something like, oh, but they're all fleeing, they're all retiring this year. Like a lot of them will, and he said that openly. So they thought, let's get our package. Let's get our, retirement. Whatever money we made criminally, illegally over the years, that's all invested. Let's bankrupt the city, and let's just make sure the hell we're never accountable for our criminal activity. All right? It's number one today.